You've stood in the same room as everyone else, heard the same words, seen the same data, and somehow you missed the thing that was obvious to someone standing 3 feet away from you. That's not a coincidence. And it's not because you're not smart enough. Here's the part nobody talks about. The people who see what others don't aren't seeing more information. They're seeing less. Their brains are deleting more noise than yours. I know, that sounds backwards. You'd think the sharpest minds are absorbing everything, processing more, working harder. But that's not what's happening inside their skull. It's the opposite. Their brain has gotten ruthlessly efficient at throwing things away, so the one signal that matters can finally get through. Stay with me, because this changes everything about how you think about attention. Every second, your eyes send roughly 10 million bits of information toward your brain. 10 million. And your conscious mind can only handle about 50 bits out of 10 million. So the question was never, why don't I notice things? The real question is, who decided which 50 bits you'd get? Here's the critical thing to understand. There's a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons sitting deep in your brainstem called the reticular activating system. Think of it like a nightclub bouncer standing at the door of your conscious mind. 10 million people are trying to get in. The bouncer only lets 50 through. And the bouncer isn't neutral. He's been trained by your fears, your habits, your past pain, to let certain things through automatically and block everything else without you ever knowing it was there. That's the blind spot. Not a flaw, a filter. This was never about intelligence. Neuroscientist Eric Kandel, who won the Nobel Prize for uncovering how memory physically reshapes neurons, spent decades proving something uncomfortable. Your brain doesn't record reality. It reconstructs it, using shortcuts built from everything that's already happened to you. So two people can stand in the exact same room, same light, same words, and walk away having experienced two different rooms entirely. Your body wasn't broken. It was protecting you. But here's what they didn't expect when researchers at Stanford started mapping this system more closely. The bouncer can be retrained, not through more effort, not through trying harder to pay attention. That's the mistake almost everyone makes. And it's exactly why willpower-based focus always burns out by 3 p.m. The real lever is something else entirely. Something that happens below conscious thought, in a loop between two structures most people have never heard of. And once you understand that loop, you can't unsee it. What happened next in the research is where it gets dark. Part 2, Kaylee, next type Karain. They found that the reticular activating system doesn't work alone. It runs in constant conversation with your dopamine circuitry, specifically a pathway that fires not when you get something, but when your brain predicts you're about to. That prediction, the whole game. Your bouncer isn't just filtering by fear. He's filtering by anticipation, quietly scanning 10 million bits a second for anything that matches what you've trained your brain to expect. And that's the villain. Not distraction, not a lack of focus. Prediction bias. If you've spent years expecting conversations to be boring, your dopamine circuitry stops flagging the interesting parts as worth noticing. If you've spent years expecting to be overlooked, your filter stops letting in the moments where you're actually seen. The pattern becomes the prison, quietly, invisibly, every single day. Here's what changes everything. You can retrain the prediction, on purpose, in 3 windows. Morning. Before any screen touches your eyes, spend 90 seconds naming 3 specific things you expect to notice that day. Not vague hopes. Specific predictions. This primes the dopamine circuit to actively hunt for confirming detail instead of running on autopilot. Midday. Take one unscheduled 60-second pause away from your phone and ask yourself what you almost didn't notice in the last hour. This interrupts the filter's default settings before they calcify for the rest of the day. Evening. Write down one thing you saw today that you would have missed a year ago. This is the step people skip, and it's the one that matters most. It's how the reticular system learns your new pattern is worth keeping. None of these steps work alone. Clean the prediction, interrupt the pattern, reinforce the shift, repeat. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about showing your own filter deliberately what you now want it to protect. Your body wasn't ignoring the world. It was loyal to an old version of you, one that no longer needs protecting. And the wildest part is, this same prediction loop that shapes what you see is the exact mechanism behind why certain people seem to have good luck over and over again. That's not luck. And in the next video, I'm going to show you the biological reason some people appear to attract opportunity, while everyone around them, working just as hard, keeps walking right past it. You've watched two people walk into the exact same room, same opportunity, same open door. One of them walks out with a job, a deal, a connection that changes their year. The other walks out having felt nothing happened at all. Same room, same 10 minutes, two completely different outcomes. And here's the part that's hard to hear. It wasn't charisma, it wasn't connections, it wasn't even confidence. It was a filter working in their favor before they ever opened their mouth. I know. That sounds like an excuse for the ones who have it easy. Stay with me, because this changes everything about how you understand luck. Here's the critical thing to understand. Your brain isn't built to notice opportunity. It's built to notice threat. That wiring kept your ancestors alive for 200,000 years, and it's exactly what's costing you chances right now, in rooms you're standing in this week. The reticular activating system, the same filter we talked about last time, doesn't just delete noise, it ranks what gets through, and threat-related signals jump the entire queue. Every time. So if your nervous system walked into that room already scanning for rejection, for judgment, for the risk of looking foolish, it spent its 50 bits of attention on exit routes and social danger. Not on the offhand comment that was actually the opening. The opportunity was there. It just lost the cue. This was never about the room. It was about what your body already decided the room was for. Here's what most people completely miss. Neuroscientist Carl Friston, whose predictive processing research reshaped how we understand perception, showed something startling. Your brain runs on a constant loop of expectation and error correction. It's not reacting to the world. It's predicting the world, then only really seeing the parts that don't match the prediction. Which means if you walk into every room bracing for disappointment, your prediction error trips only when something goes wrong, never when something goes right. But here's what they didn't expect when researchers at MIT began mapping this pattern across hundreds of subjects. The people who consistently got lucky weren't predicting good outcomes either. They were predicting almost nothing at all. Part 2, K-Lie, next type, Karain. That's the villain in this one. A nervous system stuck permanently in threat prediction mode. Not anxious in an obvious way, just quietly, constantly bracing. And bracing has a cost. It burns your 50 bits of attention on defense, leaving almost nothing left over to register the door that just opened. The people researchers labeled as lucky had trained something specific, a wider prediction window. Their systems weren't scanning for danger or waiting for good news. They were scanning with what MIT's team called low-cost openness. Attention held loosely enough that anything unexpected, good or bad, actually registered. Here's what changes everything. You can build that window in 3 windows of your own. Morning. Before you check a single message, spend 90 seconds asking your nervous system a different question than usual. Not, what could go wrong today? Instead, what am I not expecting yet? This single swap starts lowering baseline threat prediction before your first interaction even happens. Midday. Walk into your next conversation or meeting with your hands unclenched and your shoulders dropped on purpose for the first 60 seconds. This isn't about looking relaxed. It's a direct signal to your reticular system that this room isn't a threat room, which reopens bandwidth for anything unexpected the moment it happens. Evening. Name one thing that happened today that you didn't predict, good or bad. Just noticing it out loud or on paper teaches your prediction engine that surprise is worth tracking instead of filtering out. None of these steps work in isolation. Lower the threat prediction. Widen the window. Track the surprise. Repeat. This isn't about becoming lucky. It's about no longer paying an attention tax to a nervous system still guarding against dangers that left decades ago. Your body wasn't sabotaging your chances. It was running an old subscription you forgot to cancel. And once your filter widens, There's a second layer to this. The exact moment your brain decides whether a stranger is trustworthy, and it happens in under a second before you've said a single word to them. In the next video, I'll show you what your brain is actually measuring in that first second, and why it's almost never what you think.